Welcome to BikeSocial, welcome to English summertime, and what better way to spend it than on the new Tuono 660. This is essentially the stripped down version of the RS 660. We're a little bit down on power, we're 500 down on price, and we're a little bit down on spec, but hopefully we're not a little bit down on fun factor. Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's get the keys and go for a spin. Let's have a quick walk around of Aprilia's new Tuono 660. Now this is obviously based on the RS 660, which I had the privilege of testing in Italy for BikeSocial. In the UK, we're looking at £9,700 for the Tuono, which only makes it £450 cheaper than the RS 660. For me, I would have expected the Tuono to be maybe at least £1,000 cheaper. In terms of spec, the engine is identical, but Aprilia have detuned this engine. So the RS 660 is 99 horsepower and we're down to 94 horsepower on the Tuono. And the only reason they've done that is so that this bike can be homologated and detuned further for license compatible at A2. There's some aspects of this bike that I really love, and there's some aspects that are not so. Let's start with the good. First of all, the looks. I personally think it looks great. This does not look like a under £10,000 motorcycle. The clocks are really easy to use, hugely informative. There's multiple rider modes, cruise control is standard, and you can change the rider modes as you're riding. So if you want, you can turn off the traction control and the anti-wheelie as you're traveling along. The engine is a little less horsepower than the RS 660, but what Aprilia have done is change the gearing on the Tuono, so it's slightly shorter geared in first and second, which makes it feel a little bit more lively and a little bit more energetic. The riding position is quite comfortable, it's quite natural. We've got multi-adjustable suspension front and rear, but the downside is the RS 660 comes with cornering ABS and a quick shifter as standard. Now the Tuono doesn't, and in my mind the Tuono is more aimed at entry-level riders than the RS 660, so surely they should have kept the cornering ABS on the Tuono. But then again, there is an argument, like I said when I rode the RS 660, is why do you need all these multiple cornering rider aids on a bike that's only got a quoted just over 90 horsepower. You've got the winglets, which arguably create downforce to stop wheelies, but we haven't got a huge amount of power, and winglets only really start working above 70, 80 miles an hour, and this is probably a 120, 130 mile an hour bike. So they're more cosmetic than anything else. But all in all, I think the finish is lovely. I like the little winglets here. I like the Brembo quality brakes. It's an overall excellent package in terms of looks. So the Tuono is around £500 cheaper than the RS 660. You get a little less horsepower and a little less spec. If you add the cornering ABS and you add the quick shifter, it's actually more expensive than the RS 660. Well, only one thing to do is we'll play with the rider modes and see if you do need those advanced rider modes on a bike with just over 90 horsepower. Let's carry on. This is the Aprilia Tuono 660. The dash is exactly the same as the RS 660. 3 rider modes that are changing on the top: individual, commute and dynamic. Within that we have our modes that we can change. We've got the engine management, braking, traction control, wheelie control and ABS. So we're in individual at the moment. You can see us scrolling across. At the moment I've got the traction off. If I want to add traction, just simply go up or down all the way to 8, and if I want it off, it's off. And equally, when you go back to this mode, whilst you're riding, you can go in commute mode, you can flick it into individual and you get the warning, and obviously you've got your conventional trip, time, speed, average speed, MPG and fuel. When I rode the RS660, it was obvious this bike was going to come along. I really enjoyed the RS660, and essentially this is a comfier, usable, easier RS version. The handlebars and the riding position are extremely comfortable. The riding position isn't too cramped, although I am quite a short rider, but I'm sure tall riders will find it very easy and very accommodating. In Tuono style, it's not a true naked bike because we have the top fairing, which does a good job of stopping the wind blast and keeping you out of the elements. Cruise control comes as standard, and this will quite happily cruise at 80, 90 miles an hour without any problems. The MPG hasn't been too bad, and with a 15-litre fuel tank, the tank range isn't too bad either, although I think you're going to have to be a bit brave to be a pillion. The downside for me is I thought you would have cornering ABS and the quick shifter as standard. The engine is so manageable and usable, and you can change the fueling and all the anti-wheelie, the traction control and the modes on the fly. So with all those rider aids, arguably you don't need it. But then the other argument is this bike is going to appeal to new young riders who may want the cornering ABS, especially when it's unseasonably cold or you're riding in the city streets where it's wet and greasy and horrible. In terms of price, we're at around 9,500 for this model, which puts it against bikes with a lot more horsepower. We're looking at bikes like Yamaha's MT-09. We're not too far from KTM's 890 Duke, which have considerably more horsepower and more torque than the 660. It's no longer, I feel, competing with bikes like the MT-07 and Kawasaki's Z650, because it offers a lot more with its rider aids and TFT clocks and its overall finish and package. I think it's a stunning bike. The colours remind you of the MotoGP bike. It's got the winglets, it's got the little cutouts in the seat. This is an attractive bike that every time you open your garage door, you're going to smile. Could you say that really, truly, about some of the competition? Possibly not. Handling wise, the suspension has some adjustment. It's not fully adjustable. Personally for me, the shock is a little soft, a little underdamped. I need to change that slightly to compensate for my weight and aggressive riding. But all in all, it's impressive. This isn't a race bike with the bodywork removed. This is a compliant, usable, friendly road bike. The brakes are really strong. There's engine brake assist. The forks are composed, stability is excellent, and even though the horsepower isn't going to impress your mates down the pub, it's more than usable on the road. To summarise, an excellent road bike. What more would you possibly want from a road bike? It's got enough power, it's got enough rider aids, it's got enough looks, it's got enough style, it's unique, it's desirable. Okay, it's not got cornering ABS, but the only downside for me is once you put it in this price range, it's against much more powerful competition like the KTM 890. But if you're not worried about peak performance and impressing your friends, then this is a brilliant road bike. It does look quite idyllic, doesn't it? On Aprilia's new... You ready? I knew he was going to do that.